Captain, I'm reading an all-powerful entity directly ahead.
I concur, Captain. Its power is off the scale. Though I'm reading no intelligence whatsoever.
I think I can get a visual.
Captain, it's from another franchise.
Today we're going to take a look at a film from 1979 called Star Trek: The Motion Picture. We got to see this on the big screen at a special event.
Now this was very interesting because this particular Star Trek film is the only one that I never saw in theaters before.
Yeah.
So your first time seeing it in the theater was my first time seeing it in the theater. And I'd be very interested to get your perspective on this particular Star Trek film. Now, just as a little bit of background, you've seen some of the original series. So you were familiar with the characters of Kirk and Spock and all the original cast. Mm-hmm. And then we went into this film, and I gave you just a little bit of background, which I'll share with the audience here in a minute, about the background of the film. But just give me your initial thoughts.
I did like this film. There were definitely some parts that I did not understand, some parts that were kind of boring for me.
I understand that. I mean, that's a common criticism of this film. And it comes from the background that I gave you, which is basically this. After the original series had been canceled the second time, it was canceled, there was a letter writing campaign, they brought the series back. Paramount had decided to make another television series of Star Trek, and they were bringing the original cast back, and it was going to be called Star Trek Phase 2. So they were kind of in production. And what had happened is it was going back and forth between, is it going to be a movie or is it going to be a TV series? And I think they were going ahead with the television series at this point. So everything was being developed that way. And then Star Wars came out. And Star Wars was a huge hit, and Paramount basically said, what do we have that's like that we could do like Star Wars? And somebody said Star Trek. We have Star Trek. So they decided to let it go as a feature film. They, put a little more budget into it and did some different things. But what happened was, for the script, they basically went with the script of the 2-hour pilot film that was going to reintroduce Star Trek to television. And that's, so this was not necessarily designed as a script to be seen on the big screen. Yeah. So if you think of it in terms of a television show and kind of reintroducing the cast to people and showing like new special effects and what they could be able to do, it makes more sense. And my experience with this film had always been on the small screen, on the TV screen. Right. And I did not like this film initially. When it first came out, I was the same age as you. I was 10 years old when this came out. And
this is so neat.
There's a lot of parallels here. And I only saw it on television, and I didn't really understand it. I was like you. I liked it because it was Kirk and Spock and these characters that I had become familiar with, because when Star Wars got big, I was hungry for anything that was science fiction.
Right.
And the original series was airing in repeats all the time, so I would get to see it on Saturday nights and watch it that way. And I watched it on WPIX out of New York City late at night in the summer when I could stay up late. So I had become familiar with the characters and everything, so I liked it for that reason, but I didn't really I wasn't able to fully follow the story. Now, could you follow the story?
It was a little crummy here and there, as in like not understandable. But I could kind of see where they were going with this. Right. Especially knowing that it was going to be a TV series.
Right, because they were basically reintroducing the characters. Right. Interestingly, the characters of Will Decker and Ilia, that was, they would be revisited. Obviously, Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, really liked these characters and had created these characters for the television series. And then, of course, spoiler alert, they don't survive the film, right? Yeah. And when the Next Generation is made, and basically what happened is every idea that they didn't use in the feature film was then recycled and used for the Next Generation, right, including Jerry Goldsmith's music. Now, the music, did you like that?
Yeah.
I thought the music was really, it's one of my favorite parts.
I even said to you, imagine what it would be like to see this in concert.
You did say that. You leaned over in the film and said this would be a great film to see in concert, and you're right. The music is extraordinarily beautiful, and it's a very triumphant kind of
Catchy.
soundtrack. Yes.
I was,
So in
I was
concert
like
would be great.
doing this, and then I knocked my elbow on the seat, and that was the end of that. But you know,
But you had a lot of fun. So they recycled a lot of things for the next generation, and they basically recycled the characters of Will Decker and Ilea. They basically became Will Riker and Deanna Troi. You know, Will Riker had the same name. He was somewhat similar looking, the big blue eyes and the way the jaw was structured and everything. And so obviously Gene Roddenberry was looking for that kind of same actor type to be that part. And Deanna Troi's character was the big dark eyes and a very exotic character. And more so, and you haven't seen that show, but in the first few seasons, they forced her to be even more exotic, kind of almost an accent that she would speak with. So it very much mirrored that. But anyway, let's talk about this film. Now, what did you like about it? Because you did say you liked it to me.
yeah, I liked all of the situations, and like at the very end, what happens and what they discover and stuff. I don't know if I want to give it away or not.
Well, you can. I think most people who are watching this have probably seen it. So go ahead.
They see Voyager 6.
Right. So it's kind of a clever premise as to what happens there. And, you know, I think it was based on Alan Dean Foster's story in that he had a script idea which was called In Thy Image. And, you know, different people took a crack at rewriting it, and they ultimately came up with this. And I think it's a clever premise. It does kind of mimic an original series episode. I think it's called The Changeling, which had a similar plot to it, but much more, this is much bigger in scale. Now, I love the special effects. You know, the criticisms of this film are it's long, it's boring, it doesn't feel like Star Trek. They spend too much time on the special
And I would
effects.
agree with that in some parts, but not the whole film, I don't think. I feel like they could cut some parts out to make it work, maybe.
Right.
But you do need that first episode
to reintroduce your characters. And Star Trek was always about big ideas and morality plays in a science fiction universe. And I think this plays out like that. You know, when I initially, like I said, when I was 10, I didn't care for this film. Star Trek 2 came out, and I really liked that. And that's what I'm excited to show you, because that was right. That was a sequel to Space Seed, which was the one with Khan, and you've seen that episode and you really liked that. And that sort of it was a soft reboot of the Star Trek franchise, and it was very successful. But you know, through the years, as I have rewatched the motion picture, I have really come to love it. And one of the reasons I love it is because of the nostalgia factor, because it's that late 70s. The color, the vibrancy of the film and the color of the film, the color of the computers with the lights of the computers, very much the same as Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. Yeah. Because they both were filmed, you know, both came out in 1979. And something about it just spoke to me, and I really enjoyed that. But in subsequent years, I've watched it, and I really think that it gets a bad rap. I think it's a better movie than a lot of people give it credit for. But I'm very interested because you are 10 and you liked this film. Now, you have a big thing. You love science and space, and you seem to like science fiction films as well. So, and you know, but that's not so much different than me as a kid. But I didn't follow this one; it wasn't my favorite. I liked the adventure of Star Trek II more when I was a kid, and I've come to love the motion picture through the years. I've come to appreciate it. Maybe it was an acquired taste for me.
I think that I might like it a little bit more as I get older, like you.
So. I'll be interested to see what your reaction to Star Trek II is based on the fact that you like this one. I wonder which way that'll go. Okay, other things you liked about it. Did you have a favorite character in it?
My favorite character would probably be Spock in this one.
You were a little dismayed at the beginning of this because Spock was your favorite character in the original series, and you were very upset by how he was portrayed at the beginning of this film through the first probably third to half of the film.
Yeah, he was... There was a thing at the beginning where he like got jewels or something for...
Yeah, he was going through the Vulcan ritual of purging all emotion. So the difference in him at the beginning of this film versus the way he was in the series is, in the series, he was controlling his emotions, right? He's half Vulcan and half human. So he's got more emotions than the normal Vulcan, and he was controlling his emotions in all those episodes that you watched the original series. Here at the beginning of the film, he's gone through this ritual, to purge the emotions, which means get rid of them altogether. So and it's not fully successful because he hears V'ger. He hears a presence in the universe, which turns out to be V'ger, he senses, and he's calling to him, and he wants to find that out.
Right.
So he never fully completes the ritual. But when he first goes back to the Enterprise, he's basically has, almost purged all emotion. So he has no emotion. It's not even that he's controlling his emotions at this point. He has none at this point.
Right, and I don't know, he was just like acting sad and on himself or something. And then at the end, he did become...
He came
Spock.
around and he was the Spock that you knew.
And I like how whenever he got there, things actually got better, and his knowledge. So I like how he's half Vulcan and half human, because he knows some things from being half Vulcan and some things from being half human.
He has a unique experience and a unique view of the world because he shares that heritage of the two different races. Also, something I liked about this film, and I wondered, we get to see aspects of the Enterprise that we never saw before, and we frankly never see again, like the recreation deck. And when they gather everybody on the recreation deck at first, and they're showing what V'ger does, right? And we see all the different races of the crew members out there. There's Native Americans, there's Andorians, there's races I'm not even sure of. But we get to see all that, and I thought that was pretty cool, and that's a pretty neat set, right?
Yeah.
And then we go back there when Decker is kind of bringing Ilia around to try to it's not Ilia anymore, but he's trying to bring out Ilia's memories.
Right.
Interestingly, the sound here was exceptional because I heard birds chirping on the recreation deck at that point, and I had seen this film umpteen times and never heard those birds before. And they were very distinct. I could hear them very well. So I thought the sound was great to it.
Yeah.
How did you feel about Ilia? Did she had a fairly prominent part, more so than some of the secondary characters from the original series that were brought back.
I didn't really connect or anything with her at the beginning. In the middle, I kind of got used to her, and she was right there. And then she left, and I'm like, really?
Right. Well, I knew you were disappointed at that point. You get introduced to her quickly. I think the actress does a really good job. She was a model, I believe, before this, and she's from India, I think. Persis Kambata is her name, and she didn't do a lot of stuff, but she did this. And I thought, as I watched her on the screen, she gave a really nice, subtle performance for a lot of it, and I thought she, did really well. Interestingly, there's this part, remember, where they're trying to bring out her memories, and she goes and they put the headband on her, and Nurse Chapel says, I remember Ilia saying once that she wore this for whatever, and I'm thinking, she's only been on the ship. She came on the ship, and they went to they've only been on the ship for 12 hours. When did they have this conversation? Unless Nurse, the Dr. Chapel, she is in the film, maybe Dr. Chapel knew her from before. But it really, interestingly, I don't even think she would have had time to unpack. I think she came directly to the bridge, and did she ever unpack her luggage? Because it's only been how many hours?
Right.
So that was a little weird, but I didn't care. I still liked it.
And at first, I actually thought it was the same person, like from Ilia and the person who comes
right, well, because
after.
they're using her body to enact that. What did you think of the uniforms here?
I thought they were different, but I did like them. I thought that, they had different
Right. The insignias were different in this. And
right.
It's more of a jumpsuit kind of thing that, again, would be recycled into the next generation later.
Right.
They get a lot of criticism for this. I thought it was interesting. They look better on the big screen. They look much better on the big screen than the small screen. And the Admiral's uniform at first, Admiral Kirk, I thought that looked exceptionally good. And the short sleeve versions looked a little better than the long sleeve versions, which looked a little more like pajamas. And what about the Enterprise?
I thought that when they go into the cloud, there's this one shot with the Enterprise in the cloud that I really, really like. And a couple of other ones are pretty good too.
I thought the Enterprise looked very majestic in this. When they were using small models in the TV show, and this was like a 9-foot model, and they filmed it really well. Douglas Trumbull and John Dykstra did different aspects of the special effects here, and I thought they did an exceptional job. And
it looks like it could have been in the future.
Right.
Like
This could be a real ship, right? I
Right.
mean, it looked very majestic and everything. Interestingly, that sort of sequence where Scotty kind of takes Admiral Kirk around the Enterprise and he gets a view of it every place, it's sort of reenacted in Star Trek 2. I mean, he gets to go around. You haven't seen it yet, but they kind of do the same kind of tour with the new Enterprise theme and the music by James Horner. And it's
is that music better?
it's different, but I like it just as much. I mean, it's different. So it's sort of like, here we go again, but I don't care because I don't know. The sequence is great. I mean, if you appreciate Star Trek and you love the Enterprise and you love these characters, you don't mind it.
And if you're like my dad, you don't mind it.
Exactly. All right. Anything else you wanted to say about it?
No.
All right. Yummy or crummy for you?
I'm gonna give this one a yummy.
Yep. I'm going to give it a yummy too. I don't think it's just nostalgia talking. I really tried to be objective when I watched the film this time. And on the big screen, it was different than the small screen. It plays differently. But really, I think the film doesn't get the credit it kind of deserves for what it is. I mean, it did really well at the box office. It made a lot of money. And that paved the way for the future Star Trek films.
Right.
Because if it hadn't made a lot of money, I don't know if we would have gotten there. Most people don't think it's a good film. And that's okay. But I think it did what it needed to do, which was reestablished those characters in that universe and set things up and allowed us to, go back to that particular franchise. And I think it was successful in that way. And I actually enjoyed the story. I think the story works. Maybe not on a feature film level, maybe more on a television scale. But it was a lot of fun. Did you like seeing it in the theater?
Yeah.
Yep. It was. That might be the only time I ever get to see it in the theater. So I was excited that they did it. All right. Well, I guess that's a yummy for both of us then. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, live long and prosper. Can you do that? Oh, look at that. See that? All right.